Hello.
Hi, how are you?
I'm fine, thanks. How are you?
I'm very well. Well, I say I'm very well. I am just as disappointed ongoing with the world as I usually am.
Well, Natch, as I said to somebody yesterday, how are we supposed to go on? It's just getting more brutal. Like, it's ridiculous. Every day there's a fresh indignity.
And what's the indignity you're particularly indignant about today?
Well, something that everybody that's got two eyes and a brain, I think, well, I say everybody, actually, I don't even think it is everybody. I think people that are paying attention, that care about women, have been talking about this week, which is this horrendous phenomenon where it's been referred to as a rape academy, where men have been uploading images of them sedating and then raping their partners and wives, sharing information of what medication, ordering medication. I mean, it's just,
Yeah,
what the
and,
fuck?
and this is the when people intervene, think they're making some kind of good point. Going, it's not 62 million individual people; it's 62 individual clicks. I don't care.
Yeah,
What?
it's wild.
How is
It's
that
wild.
annoying?
I saw a cartoon about it and it was like a guy, obviously, talking to, I presume it was meant to be a woman that was getting bitten by ants. And he was saying to her, it's not 62 million individual ants, it's 62 million individual bites, and it sort of feels a bit like that now. It's just this death from a thousand cuts of it's just we're becoming more and more sort of numb, I think, or we're at risk of that, where it's becoming more and more normalized that, women's torture, women's pain is not being dealt with, like, at all, it feels like. So this is off the back of a big CNN research and then article that came out I think it came out at the beginning of the week, maybe. It's really easy to find if you just Google it. So it's a CNN article, and then obviously other news sources have taken it up, and it's been talked about lots on, particularly on Instagram. That's where I've certainly seen lots of stuff. And this is on the back of course, the Giselle Pelico case, where it became clear that there were various different places where men that were predators could go to share the experience with other men who were predators.
What I didn't know about the Pelico trial was that there are still people out there that weren't identified and haven't been convicted for what they did to her.
I mean, I just think there's so many of them, isn't there? I mean, like, where do you begin with something like that? I mean, outside public executions, just joking.
What she
Hashtag
said
guillotine could dispatch a lot of them pretty sharpish.
with a
And I'm
clear.
joking, but I'm also not joking because you just think, why are the rules not being enforced for some people? Why do some people, men, think that they're above those rules? And they must be in some way justifying to themselves that it's not the same as a woman being, dragged off the street. It's not
Well,
stranger danger.
can I tell you there's actually empirical evidence for that in Scotland because in a Scottish Societal Attitude Survey 2019 in relation to attitudes to violence against women, they asked people to identify how wrong a man's behaviour was from a scale of 1 to 7, 1 being not wrong at all and 7 was very seriously wrong. They didn't use the word rape, but um, one identified the person as knowing another person, as in having a relationship with them, and one not knowing the person. And consistently higher was marked not knowing the person as being more serious. Now, I can't get my head round that because, first of all, they're making a decision about whether or not that's more or less serious. Secondly, why
Mm.
is the violation of trust between people that know one another not not equal to being assaulted by a person that you don't know?
It's
Why
because
is
it's a spectrum. It's a spectrum of acceptability of abuse of women, isn't it? So, like, the biggest bogeyman that we have is a man dragging you into a car or whatever, dragging you into the woods and raping you, or men, multiple men maybe doing that. That's like the worst. But then the idea, and I've read this repeatedly, that that you're at home and it's your wife and you already have sex. So really, what's the big deal? She's used to it. And one of the defences that some of these men that have been charged have used is that it's a sex game, and that the women is then reneging on the deal that they've made, that the women wanted this to be something where she might wake up during it and it's like a frisson of excitement. And I'm sure there are people that have that kink, no kink shaming on you, but I think the vast majority of stuff we're talking about here is women that in no way agreed to this. Because I've read about several women. So there was the Giselle Pelico case, where of course she found out that her husband had been meeting online, and there was what, 50 plus men that had, that were eventually charged by the French authorities, that had passed through her house and had access to rape, and using the word rape, Giselle Pelico. That was then sort of a tipping point where different news sources and journalists obviously realised, well, hang on, this is probably isn't isolated, and that's why CNN found this other one. So the Pelico case, I think, was on a dating website called, there was a chat room within it called Without Her Knowledge. I mean, that pretty much lays out your stall, doesn't it?
Yeah, I
That's
mean,
not like we've
it's
agreed that she's asleep and it's a game. That's the joy is in the fact that she doesn't know and she's not giving permission. So then the CNN then did this extensive investigation where what they've described as a hidden online world where the commodification and amplification of sexual violence against women is flourishing. That's such a scary sentence, right? So it's telling us that it's about money, right? They're commodifying it because men are buying and selling these experiences or viewing these experiences, or drugs to enable these experiences. And the amplification, because now, because of social media, where you might have been an isolated weirdo in the town that you came from, now men know that there are tons of weirdos everywhere that they can all pervert together. So they're joining each other.
I think what rocked the France about the Pelico case was that they weren't ostensibly weirdos, whatever that might be. They
Yeah, I
were.
mean, obviously,
They
it's not necessarily a man in
about your
a dirty
day.
Mac.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, yeah.
That's. I think that's really what's terrifying about it, is that these are just folk that you might meet every day doing something. One thing I have to make really clear from a legal standpoint, I think the law has now changed in France as well as a result of this. Sex without consent is rape. It's
Mm-hmm.
all to do with consent. You cannot consent to something that you don't have knowledge of. You cannot consent to something when you are too drunk to be able to consent, or you're unconscious through drink, through drugs, through sleeping deeply, that
Mm-hmm.
you cannot consent in those circumstances. So it has to be the free agreement of two people who are actively consenting to something. Uh, You know, how is that insurmountably difficult for some men to understand?
And didn't the law change in Scotland in the 80s?
Yeah, so this is a scary thing. And as a lawyer, I keep telling people the law only protects what the social mores are at the time. The law does not give you rights which are inalienable. In fact, law can give you rights and law can take you away the rights. And because we live in a patriarchy, the rights are the rights are defined in terms of men ruling and women getting rights in that system rather than all people just being equal under the law. I'll give you for instance, up till 1982 in Scotland, men in marriage could not rape their wives. That wasn't, and the underlying rationale is, of course, as a woman has consented to marriage and presumably all that comes with that, and therefore she has given basically her consent. There you go. Now that was 1982. I was 11 years old at that time. I was going into
Yeah.
secondary school in those circumstances. And if you think those laws can't be changed just as fast again, you'd be wrong. And that's why we have to be absolutely on guard against the rolling back of women's rights, because it is women's rights. Nobody is suggesting that men's rights over their bodily autonomy are rolled back. We're seeing it in
No.
the US and we are seeing it again rear its ugly head in the UK, and we have to fight it at every turn.
Because when we talk about rolling back women's rights, people, I think, instinctively and quite understandably go towards the idea of healthcare and access to abortion. But that's the thin end of the wedge. It's access to abortion and it's access to contraception to prevent you from getting pregnant in the first place. And then we're talking about, well, who has rights here? And it often feels in that discussion that the side that are against women's health care, that the fetus, their rights are sort of above the women's rights. And we're seeing that happening just now in America. One of Reform's candidates in England is a very well documented, very loud and articulating herself, anti-abortion campaigner, an American who's moved over here. I think that's extremely clear. And I think that's something that we really need to be on our guard with women as well, that are, as we've discussed before, that are patriarchy patrollers. We saw it during the witch trials. We didn't personally see it, but it happened during the witch trials, where women would either accuse other women, maybe to get power, maybe because they genuinely believed it, maybe to protect themselves. And then women that were accused and were then tortured would confess and give up other women's names, probably because they were being tortured, and they thought that this might end what's happening. But we have to be careful, because we're so manipulated by it. And we can see it, we've talked about this before, but we can see it with the MAGA women who are sheltering under the power umbrella that MAGA men have. But that'll come back to bite them. Like, there's not a doubt in my mind.
We've
There's this
already
great guy I
seen
used to
it.
follow on Twitter who used the phrase, all tokens get spent. So eventually these women that are there as sort of tokenistic, performative housewife females, who, by the way, which is absolutely their right. They're not at home looking after their children. They're working. They're making money from being on TV. So they're massive hypocrites from the get-go. But these women are amongst the voices that are taking away our rights.
Did you see that? I think it's, forgive me if I've got her name wrong, is it Marjorie Taylor Greene, the friend of Trump, who was a huge Trump supporter? Then he sacked her, then he called her a traitor, and then her
Mm-hmm.
children were getting death threats, and she was on TV saying, and he just didn't care that my children were receiving death threats. And it's like,
They
no
don't
shit.
care.
I,
They're
I
all about
don't.
women and children until it doesn't suit them to be about women and children. Do you know what I mean? It's so fake, and we can see through it. We can totally see through it. So this CNN investigation, let me just get the details up again. Um, they found a website, and it's a porn site called motherless.com. I mean, what the fuck is that name even about? And it's home to more than 20,000 videos of so-called sleep content uploaded by users with hundreds of thousands of views. The website, which had around this figure, 62 million visits in February alone, and whose core audience is the United States, describes itself as, quote, a moral-free file host where anything legal is hosted forever. I mean, it's not legal. It's not legal
Yeah,
to do that. So this is so gross. It's categorized using different descriptive tags such as hashtag passed out and hashtag eye check. And there's like a really horrible image of a woman where a man's pulling her eyelid up to check that she's absolutely out of it. So fucking gross. So then these men are then filming themselves. There's a group in there that's called ZZZ, like a cartoon sleep. And that's where there's different people that are going on, and they're uploading content. They're talking about what their practices. Then they're linking up with other people that are giving them tips. There's one guy that's selling medicine. Somebody saying that he had a business dispatching sleeping liquids. I mean, apart from anything else, I mean, they could kill women. Like,
absolutely.
I mean, these are not chemists. They're not doctors. They're meddling with serious medications.
Yeah. And all you need to have is somebody with depressed sleeping or some vulnerability already. They are literally, it should be identified as an attempted murder.
Well, is it? That's what I was going to say. Is it illegal? I mean, I presume it's illegal to drug somebody to sleep without their
Of
consent.
course, absolutely. It's illegal to drug anybody, but if you're giving someone a drug reckless as to whether or not they live or die, then it's and if they do die, it's culpable homicide at the least, or murder at the best. I mean, that's what people should be getting charged with, attempted murder.
Yeah. And then the CNN article, which I really recommend everybody reads, but it's a hard read, so be prepared, obviously. But they interviewed a woman called Zoe Watts, and she found out that her husband of 16 years had been giving her that. I mean, this is so horrifying. He'd been giving her a cup of tea last thing at night. She'd worked hard during the day. He gave this nice act of making her a cup of tea every night, and she said that she was glad to get that cup of tea and have like a little relax before she went to bed. And he was crushing up their son's sleeping medication. She drank the cup of tea, spark out, unconscious, and then he was assaulting her. And she said, we worry about who's coming behind us walking down the street, or even who's friending us on Facebook. You know, we worry about going to our car late at night in a car park, but we don't worry about who you lie next to. I didn't realise I had to. I mean, it's the
Well,
worst betrayal of trust.
do you know what? Giselle Pelico said fear must change sides, and absolutely it must. And you know, I always think when I hear stuff like this, right, what can we do? What are we actually going to do to change things? Now, there
Mm-hmm.
are things that I see are important that we should be changing things. The first is that we should be encouraging our lawmakers to protect women. And one thing that I see, or two things I see in relation to that, is first, making femicide a crime,
Right.
make, making it clear that when a woman is killed by a man, that is registered as femicide. And the reason for that is the number of women that are assaulted or killed by people that they are in a relationship with, in a former relationship, are being stalked by, are being assaulted because they are a woman, is not being properly identified by our laws at the moment. Yes, people are getting charged with murder, but we don't have the statistics on how many of them are femicides. And it's important when you deal with something, you have to first of all call it what it is and identify it. And countries throughout the world have been being called on by the UN to do this for decades now. And two or three countries really, really recently have. And I think Scotland should be doing it as well. So that's something that I think we should be doing. The next thing that I think we should be doing is we should be adding misogyny as an aggravation to pre-existing crimes. This started off as a bill in Scotland in 2022. It was shelved. I think either that bill has to come back or the Green Bill, the Greens that I haven't read yet in Scotland. So I don't know the details of it, but they seem to be making misogyny a standalone crime. So I think
Can
we
I
should.
just can I go back to 2022 a second? That's what Nicola Sturgeon was talking about the day that she gave the apology to the people that had been accused of being
Yep,
witches. So
yep,
she was able to tie in the huge human rights abuse of the Scottish witch trials to the way in which women are still treated today. You
that's
know, I mean, we would have 6 years ago we would have been saying, obviously women aren't tortured today, but I mean, like I just feel like it's like a psychological torture. We're getting the Epstein files are out there that's still not being dealt with. The president of the United States is making life hard for everybody, like in a really basic way with the cost of fuel and the availability of fuel because of his hubris. Like we are victims of him on the daily. And the fact that he is mentioned so many times in the Epstein files and nothing's been done about it. And that's like tacit approval for men grabbing women by the pussy.
what I
Like,
would really
the
like, what I would really like to know is I would really like to know from an American lawyer, and if there's any American lawyers out there, please get in contact. What do they mean when they say there isn't enough evidence for anybody named in the files? Like, what requires evidence? Because I know the laws are very different in the US. For example, I think some states don't recognise no body murders. So if you can't find the body, you don't know what's happened. You can't say it's a murder and people can't be convicted of it.
could
Like,
we compile a list of those states?
well, I don't
For no
know.
real reason,
I
just
I don't know
just
whether or
interest.
not um, whether or not that's right or not. But I do know cases that I hear about, and I'm like, but she's going to divorce her husband, and then she goes to see her lawyer, and then she disappears. Do we not?
Yeah,
Do we not have a guess? There was a comedy skit on one of the reels saying me on a jury, and it was like it's something about she recently divorced her husband. It was just a woman shouting, "Guilty! He's guilty! He's definitely
yeah.
guilty."
Take him away. So there is discussion about the Greens, the Scottish Greens. I presume this is one of their electoral kind of bids, is that they're saying that if we get in, or if we get more seats, or whatever, we're going to push through a pledge to criminalise misogyny. Now this is very interesting because it is on. We read about this on Instagram on the National, which is a pro-independence newspaper in Scotland, who are doing some really good reporting about a lot of stuff that's to do with women at the moment. It's really interesting. interesting. But they've got this article that's saying that. So it's a new bill aimed at tackling misogynistic harassment and abuse. It'll be tabled by the Scottish Greens in the next session of Parliament, they have pledged. It's called the Misogyny and Criminal Justice Bill, and it would recognise, as you've said, Claire, misogyny as a specific offence in Scots law. So, and then it'll be accompanied, which it has to be, by funding for violence prevention services in local councils, schools, and community organisations to help curb gender-based violence. One of the things that we really need to be doing is we need to be talking to kids from when they're tiny. We need to be talking about, about gender issues, about misogyny, about the difference between men and women, that's real and that isn't real, and the history of what's happened with women and the imbalance of power. We need to be starting from there because, I don't want to go into talking about the manosphere and all that kind of thing, but we know there's like a really bad atmosphere in some ways at the moment, and we really, really need to tackle it. But interestingly, the first comment on it
Oh
is,
no, first of all, the first comment on it is criminalising any aspects of speech is bad. Who gets to decide what's misogyny? I mean, Zoe, who gets to decide what murder
me,
is? Do you
fuck
know
off.
exactly? Right, that's not good. Is it
The
going to
end.
is it going to be the same as online crimes, where if someone is offended, that's enough to criminalise you?
Can we just clarify this once and for all? Particularly for viewers, listeners in America, because when we were in America, we had this conversation a couple of times where people said to us, oh, yeah, but you jail people just for offending somebody or hurting somebody's feelings. That's not how the law works. If that was how the law worked, 98% of Scottish people would be in jail. We offend people on the daily. It's our sense of humour. Like, it's an offending sort of a place. It's still got a very edgy sense of humour, I would argue. I'd certainly be in the jail. I'd be running a wing with all my offending bitches. We'd all be left, right, and centre offending everybody.
Fit?
It's exactly
You want to be in your gang?
that you're a burglar. You're in a different that's a
Oh,
different
sorry,
thing.
sorry.
But
Um,
it's how hard is it to charge somebody and then see that through and have somebody jailed for speech, Claire?
Well, first of all, speech is free the same way as it is in the US. We've got Article 10 of the European Convention on Human Rights, which guarantees your freedom of speech. And specifically, the case law on the matter says it's not enough that it offends you. That's not what we're about. What's
Yeah.
what what the freedom of speech is about is protecting your right to say what you want about what you want to say, including political free speech, which is, I suppose, the most protected, the apex of all free speech. But it also doesn't allow people to career around saying exactly what they want about anything with no care to the consequences of what they say. If you are whipping up hate against people, yeah, that's a crime. Why wouldn't it be a
Of
crime?
course it is. So what American people that we spoke to are talking about is what I presume was really amplified. Was there that woman in England last year when, or was it the summer before? Time just has no consequence for me now. But she had said online to set the hotels on fire where there were asylum seekers. I think what she got jailed for was essentially sort of an encouragement for people to arson, right? And people were like, oh no, she got jailed because she just said, I don't agree with there being asylum seekers. They're two very different things. You can say, I don't agree with that as much as you like. You can't be criminalised for that.
Yeah, I can't remember the detail. I can't remember the detail of that case, but I can guarantee you nobody has got the jail for saying I don't like asylum seekers.
Because again, there are a lot of noisy, like a minority, but a lot of noisy people that are saying that left, right, and centre on the internet, and I don't see them having any consequences for their actions.
Can I go back to this? It carries on this quote.
Yeah, yeah.
Will misandry be a crime? If so, who decides what misandry is? Is that going to be you again, Zoe?
Yeah, I'll do it. Happily.
And the person asks, will I be able to go back and all the hateful comments women have posted and get them done for historical misandry?
Mate, listen, if you don't want women piping up, then shut the fuck up.
No, it's just like I cannot. It goes on and on and
I mean,
on.
it's sometimes with you get these guys that make these comments, and you have to think. I don't want to take us to the gutter, but you have to think they're getting off in some way
Well,
on saying that, and
can,
then on women getting annoyed with them, like they're enjoying it. It's like
can
as
I
the
just
youth say, it's rage baiting.
can I just read this one part of the sentence, and I think we'll see how clearly it's been proved. this person, so they say various other things and they say, I already get accused of being Hitler on the daily without even mentioning my views on anything. Now, let's just pause there. I don't know, Zoe, how many times you've ever accused of being Hitler without even mentioning my views on anything. Do you think that person might be positing some pretty offensive views?
I mean, I'm quite forward.
Hmm.
I will express my views. Nobody has ever accused me of being like Hitler, ever. So I am imagining that he is expressing racist dog whistles. That would be my guess. And we see it all the time. And I think we're so sophisticated now that most of us can recognise a dog whistle. And most of us can recognise when somebody uses a tactic of chucking in stats and percentages and being like, look, here's some numbers. This proves my point. Because this guy's got such a chip on his shoulder that I'm surprised that he's not dragging that shoulder along the ground as he moves. Ridiculous. Country's a joke, and he's actually used the wrong countries. What you mean, sir, is country apostrophe S.
No, I can't do apostrophes though. I
Listen, I normally I wouldn't be a dick about it, but I just think don't act as if you're coming from a place of intellectual rigor when you can't do basics. I know that's petty. I know
You've
it's
just
petty.
affected my career.
Shush. Anyway, apart
Sorry.
from the fact the world is burning,
Yes.
literally and metaphorically, have we got anything we'd like to say to sort of cheer things up towards the end of this little extra bulletin?
Yes. We decided this year not to go to the tartan parade in New York because it just felt for us the wrong time to be going across to America, and we felt like we'd be pretending everything was okay.
Yeah.
So we took the decision not to go, and it was a really, really tough decision.
And then we had FOMO last weekend.
We very much had FOMO, but Zoe and I both love American people. Zoe's family are
Yeah.
American, and they love
Travelled around America. I love it. I
being
wanted to, yeah.
there. And but we just decided that we just couldn't pretend everything was okay, so we didn't go.
Hmm.
However, a bunch of our amazing Witches of Scotland clan.
Sorry.
Oh,
Sorry. Live news as it comes in. So
yes,
that thread that we've just been commenting on, the person that commented, so a woman had written, "Oh, the misogynists are all showing themselves," and I wrote, they always out themselves." And he's responded to me, even though I didn't tag him. Who is they? Who is they? I want to protect all speech, not just one side. Why is it that me saying this makes the left connect dots that don't exist? What part of what I said was outing myself? Now, bear in mind, I didn't tag him. I wasn't talking to him
also,
directly.
what part of that is the left?
The left, and he's saying he is left, and then he's just written echo chamber, echo chamber, echo chamber, echo chamber.
Exactly.
Like I give a fuck. Honestly, shut up. Shut up. Now, you see, I could get the jail with people's thoughts about being jailed for being
Listen,
offensive.
yeah, exactly. Wait till thought crime becomes a crime. You'll never get out of the
Sorry,
house.
sorry about that live update that I just had to put in there. Right, so back
So,
to Tartan Week.
yeah. So, whilst we couldn't go to Tartan Week, we were so delighted and so happy that so many people turned up to Tartan Week, and throughout Tartan Week, even though they weren't in New York, wore their Witches of Scotland tartan and tagged us, and we saw all the photographs of it. It
So
was
nice.
incredible. Particular shout out to Rose and to Pete, who we met when we were in New York, and they're a great couple. And they went to various events in Tartan Week, and they also went to an event in New York where they were fully dressed in the Witches of Scotland tartan, and other people were there wearing the Witches of Scotland tartan. They come over to talk to them. How cool
So
is that?
cool, so
I know,
cool, so
I
cool.
know.
And so if you want to see Rose in all her glory, her handle is Lady Momington. I don't know if she's private or not, but she really rocks it. And she made this amazing sporran like handbag to go with it, and she just looks so cool. She's so great.
Yeah. So we thank every one of you that tagged us and mentioned us. We really appreciate it. And as we say,
Yeah,
is
and it,
resistance. We're not doing it just because it looks super cool. It does look
I mean,
super
it
cool.
does. It
But
does. It obviously functions as its prime aim, which is that we remember and we can learn and teach, and other people then learn about it through the wearing and the use of the tartan.
yeah,
But the thing that's really bringing us great joy in these dark times is the fact that it builds community, right? So the clan, our little nascent clan, is standing at something like 22,000 members, and I think it just shows that, you know, with the aims that we share about looking after the vulnerable and about coming together and about finding strength together and about resistance, that's there, and we can't forget that, and everybody needs to keep remembering that and not feel shut down by ding dongs like, I just want to protect free speech.
Yeah.
Fuck off. So I think we need to remember and keep that energy, and like maybe not do the guillotine that I was just jokingly suggesting earlier, but just kind of keep it going in a positive, maybe not violent way. But I do think there are so many more of us, and we need to keep those conversations going and reach out to other people so that you don't feel so desperately alone, because it is really hard just now. You know, I
We
wrote
do.
on another comment on something. It's brutal. It's brutal just now. It's
We are
every
not
day.
Sorry, we are not only the newest, but we must be the fastest growing clan in Scotland. And when people come together, if you get those sorts of comments and you get those sorts of things, tag us. We'll happily tag other people and say, look what this Egypt has said. Now, to be perfectly honest, I think we're actually, personally, I think a lot of the time that is diverting us from things that we should be doing.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
I,
yeah.
I know it can be satisfying to have an argument with folk online, but in fact, what we should be doing is just seeing that and
Oh,
right, do
hang on.
he,
Oh, no, you're actually talking to me, and you're dressing it up as if you're talking to everybody, but actually you're saying to me, don't wrestle with pigs because you both get muddy and the pig enjoys it. Is that what you're saying?
exactly.
It's difficult. I've talked about this so many times, but I just feel like if I'm getting involved and not
That's
really
not
giving a fuck about it, that they're not hassling somebody else.
no, that's
And I
not no.
enjoy the sport. I do
I
enjoy
that's
the
it.
sport.
Just be honest.
Yeah,
That's it.
I
But
do. I enjoy it.
the problem is with that. Do you know what the problem is with that? It's wasting your time.
Yeah. I'll try and keep it to a minimum.
We have that live, folks. We've got that
Yeah,
recorded.
yeah. I
She
said
will
that. I said I'll
probably do
try. I said I'll
anyway.
try. I mean, it's not healthy. It's not healthy. But the plus point is that you realise that there's lots of other people that feel the exact same way that you do, and there's lots of good people, and there's probably lots of other people that are taking Claire's advice and are like, I'm not getting involved with that massive waste of time, that bell
Absolutely
end.
disengage and see when you, because nobody ever won a war on misogyny by writing back to misogynists. They are just wasting your time when you could be writing to your MP saying, I want the law to change. Let them
Hmm.
spend their time yap away in their own social media bubbles while you go out into the world and change it.
Yeah, yeah. I think definitely. So we've got some good podcast guests booked
We
coming
do.
up. We've got a podcast coming up very soon, which is about current witch accusations with a really horrifying setting. But we'll tell you about that when we're
It's
releasing it.
probably one we'll actually have to put a trigger warning on just
Yeah.
in discussions. But anyway,
We've never put trigger warnings on before, and everybody knows it's about torture and murder of women primarily.
I know.
I mean, take just take it as read. Some of this will be. We could have put a trigger warning today. Maybe
True.
we should. I just feel like we're all grown-ups. Anyway, we will discuss and
I
decide.
also feel like my skills in IT are not good enough to go back and put a trigger warning on anything.
Yeah, me. We should probably discuss this when we're not recording. We will discuss this. Tell us your thoughts. Are they a good idea? I don't know, but we have got some good episodes coming out. The one we just recorded is really interesting, and we've got some other stuff, including a woman who's a sports sociologist. Which initially you might go, well, what's that got to do with anything? A lot. So we'll be talking to her, which will be really interesting, and various other great guests. So
Hang
we're going
on,
to try really, really hard to get back to fortnightly podcast episodes.
hang on. First of all, we've claimed
Yes?
that so many times, it's technically gaslighting at this stage.
It's not. It's with the best of intentions. I'm not saying it meaning, yeah, right. I'm saying it meaning, I believe in us, Claire. I believe in us, baby.
I do. I do.
Okay?
See the sports scientist,
Sociologist.
sociologist, they're not training raccoons, are they?
I don't really know her well enough to ask her that yet. Just cool your
I
jets.
all I want to be clear about is I do not want you getting an expert on ostensibly on some women's issue, only to find out it's for your own raccoon training purposes.
I think you'll find that my training academy is for everybody's benefit. And I'll just leave it at that. Okay. I saw a really cool thing today, which was about somebody protesting like really horrible kind of hate preachers, and they were really kind of like anti-LGBTQIA plus. They were really anti-women, anti-abortion. And what this person was doing was throwing down, I don't know if it was seeds or whatever, and encouraging all these Glaswegian pigeons to pile on so that the preacher was there trying to talk, and then there's just like a flurry of pigeons. And pigeons to me are the street fighters of the world.
All
So
God's
I
pigeons.
very much enjoyed that. I
All
could do that
God's
on a grander
pigeons.
scale with ravens. And because ravens are so clever and they remember people's faces, I feel like
Raven
let's
art.
forget about AI. Let's be thinking about raven intelligence.
Let's get into the real world.
Yeah, RI. I've just invented that. Claire, write it down.
Raven intelligence.
Raven intelligence. Right, okay. Are we
Have
going
you
to say cheerio for now?
cheerio for now?